Hi, I'm Will Sharon, and today I want to talk to you about integrating dark shadow. Now, a little background on this. Uh, in general, the work that I have been doing is with something that we call light shadow. So, what is that? Light shadow are the aspects of yourself that you have denied yourself. And you may have done it to fit in, to get a job, to find a mate. You may have done it even younger than that when you were a kid, where if you were overly exuberant in your household, you were told to calm down, and you learned very quickly that that level of exuberance was not something that would result in you being loved by either one of your parents. So, to use Robert Bly's metaphor, you took those things and you shoved them in a long, dark, black bag that you've been dragging around behind you. And so, the integration of light shadow has to do with you repatriating those parts of yourself. And that's a whole process, which is a subject of another day. Um, in general, dark shadow is what I used to deal with when I was working in psychiatric hospitals many decades ago. And these are behaviors in individuals and in societies that are intolerable. They're forms of aggression that result in bodily harm or death to other people. Their behavior patterns that are born out of envy and jealousy that one acts on, and so on and so forth, right? So, in general, we can say that dark shadow consists of behaviors that are not acceptable, not the kind of thing you want to repatriate. So, what do you do with them? Well, for the most part, since the bulk of you, I would guess probably virtually all of you who are watching this video, are not living in a country where somebody's dropping bombs on you, are probably living in a country, even though we are in the midst of this pandemic and lockdowns and so forth, where you can get enough food to eat and you've got a roof over your head and you've got some kind of either gainful employment or income. In other words, you're not on the edge of a situation that might require you to engage in some behaviors like self-defense and so on and so forth, okay? Now, if we go back to the process that I usually talk about, you will have a dream that shows you how you are organizing your experience with the implicit question, do you want to continue to organize your experience this way? And those questions are born out of this desire to be the fullness of who you really are, okay? What we are dealing with today is the exact reverse of that, because our waking life is demonstrating to us over and over and over a lot of dark shadow material. Okay, you can look at it from anything from Black Lives Matter to Jeffrey Epstein to the horrors of an economic system. And this is not a knock on capitalism, it is simply the structure that we have that allows children to go hungry in the greatest country, arguably, to this point in the world, okay? We are seeing the things that we have looked away from. And we are seeing them because it's impossible to look away from them anymore. Because if it hasn't, if the current economic situation hasn't affected you yet, it will, even if you have a job. And even if you keep your job, the collapse of an economic system based on the kind of debt levels that we have will affect you. And you will be forced to confront the effect it's not only had on you, but a lot of other people. Okay. So the darkness is in our face, and the process is reversed, which is to say, in working with light shadow, there's a feedback loop, right? You have experience, you have a dream, you understand what's stopping you from moving forward and so forth. In this case, in the case of this dark shadow, you perceive what it is that you have looked away from, what we collectively have looked away from. And then you have a dream. And those dreams oftentimes are depicting you in situations where you are using violence, where you are in control and authority and you have power over someone for life or death. They're very uncomfortable dreams because they're not the way you usually see yourself, right? But what the dream is doing is talking to you about this aspect of you that because you've looked away, you haven't had to confront. So let me give you a specific example. I grew up in a household with a lot of violence towards me. My initial response to any kind of situation where there is conflict is a violent thought or experience. It's either bodily or in my mind. That's where I go. Boom. I'm hardwired, right? The question is, what do you do with that? Well, because I've been on the planet for a while and I'm used to this, I understand it for what it is. It's a programmed response. But what I want to do is I want to transform or transmute that force in the container of my soul. Okay? Because left to its own devices, it will run amok, right? And we are seeing in some situations that it is running amok, that people get themselves into situations where they have a lot of support around them that says violence is the answer. And so they become violent because that's totally accepted. It's not accepted to me. It's not acceptable to me and to you, right? We don't want to behave that way. So what do we do with that aspect of ourselves that has the capacity to be violent? Well, one of the things we can do is we can transform it into justice. We can say, okay, I see how I have allowed, been complicit in violence being done to other people. What I want to do is take this feeling that I have in myself, become aware of it, understand it, and stop looking away. Stop looking away. And that is how you integrate dark shadow. You understand the capacity that you have, which does not justify it, and it does not justify it in other people, but it makes it more human. You can understand it as a human aspect, and because you can do that, you can be effective in changing it, even if it's in a small way. Okay. One of the problems I think we have had around dark shadow is that it has always seemed like something you kind of sort of have to do, or you get pulled into and makes you feel lousy, and what do you really do with it? There's something you can really do with it. And the amazing thing about this particular point in history is it's right in our face. It is not something you're doing on an individual basis. We are all confronting it. Now, there's a lot of us who are looking at it and going, yeah, I'm going to still look away. I don't want to deal with this. As a matter of fact, I don't have to deal with this because I live in a nice neighborhood and have a job and so on and so forth. That's going to work maybe for a little bit longer, not much longer. Okay. We are in the midst of a cataclysmic change in the world. And when you look at the sort of standard media, it is still operating in the container that somehow we're going to kind of get sort of back to where we were. Okay. And that's goes back to sort of Einstein's admonition that you cannot solve a problem in the context in which it was created. It's not going to happen. Okay. So what do you do? What do you do with these violent thoughts, these violent dreams that are coming up in you? First of all, you notice them. You understand that what lives in you lives in all of us, and what lives in all of us lives in you. And then the primary question becomes, what do you want to do with that? How do you want to understand that? How do you want to integrate that into yourself to say, yes, I have that capacity, but it is in the container of my soul. It is in the container of the fact that I have a much greater capacity to love than I do to destroy. You're probably thinking, is that really true? Yeah, it's really true. So the integration process is not comfortable. It is also unavoidable. And I would suggest to you that if you are having dreams that concern you, that frighten you, that you take a step back and look at them from the standpoint of what message they're trying to give to you. Because that's what dreams are. They speak to you in a different language. And these dreams that we are having where it looks like we are identifying with the violence being done to other people are really an opportunity for us to use that information to transform ourselves and to transform our culture. So if you're having tough dreams, by all means, get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk to you. And I expect this discomfort's going to go on for a while, not forever, but for a while. And we are going to see more and more things that we have decided not to look at, not to see, not to want to know. And we're going to have to confront what we're going to do about it. So it's important that you stay centered in yourself. It's important that you not be carried away by these are the bad guys, I'm the good guys. None of that stuff. It's not going to get us anywhere. Okay? It really isn't. Nobody's come to save us. It's up to us, each individual person, to embrace the aspects of themselves that are what we call generically dark shadow and transform them. So well and truly, take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you soon.